elections. So for starters, let's give these guys a round of applause because they're doing about this stuff. So real quick, the purpose of the event this evening is so that we can get public education and public information about your very respectable candidates up here who are going to be running for your Board of Ed. The idea is for you to learn about them, their positions, and their policies. We are not going to be doing any campaigning. We're not going to be doing any personally attacking kinds of behaviors. We're going to let people talk because everybody's here to hear these guys up here at the table. So I'm going to ask that if you have opinions, reactions, stuff like that, hang on to them and then go on social media later and complain about all of this. But don't interrupt the flow of this free and cool event because everybody putting this together, it took a lot of folks to do it. The Borough of Collingswood has donated the space. Jerry Chambers and Scottish Rite has donated his time. His staff are helping us out. And we've got volunteers. Rhodes Mason is our timekeeper over here. This organization was done by Katie Delaney and Seth Munoz to put this event together. At the front of the door, yeah, round of applause for all those folks, please. Yeah, thank you. At the door, Seth has question cards. If anybody would like to ask a question, you have 15 minutes from when I stop talking, we start this thing to write a question down. Seth's going to collect them, and I'll filter them through, and we'll see if we can get them up to the panelists tonight. We're going to call a 15-minute moratorium on that so people aren't scribbling things and we lose control and all the rest of that stuff. So the idea is if you have a question you want answered, write it down. We'll try and filter it through. And then here's the basic groundwork for the debate. So all of the candidates up here are going to have 90 seconds to introduce themselves and make their cases to you, the public. They're going to then have 90 seconds at the end for closing remarks. For any one candidate of whom the question is asked directly, there is a 60-second response, and then if folks want to respond after that, just raise your hand and we'll call on you, and you get 30 seconds to talk after that. We will give last word 30 seconds to the original person to whom the question was posed, if they so desire. Is everybody kind of clear on those rules? Does everybody want to kind of do a quick mic check and say your name and hello?
Good evening, I'm Ray Becker.
Yeah, good evening, I'm Tim Farrow.
Clinton Connor.
Stephen Radeski.
I'm Jason Wall.
Good evening, Dan Robinson.
Well, thanks everybody. I'm going to try and probably keep this up around here until we can get it going. So with that in mind, we're going to let the candidates just take their 90 seconds and introduce themselves to everyone, starting with Ray Becker. Mr. Becker.
The advantage of being first alphabetically. Good evening, everyone. I also wanted to just acknowledge the Collingswood Educational Advocacy Group and the work you've all done in pulling this together tonight. Also, kudos again to our mayor. He and other city representatives are frequently allowing us opportunities to be engaged here in the community, and I like that. And also to thank our moderator. As I said to somebody the other day, when the patch dropped us and you, Matt came up with a different way to come back and continue to be involved and represent us here in the community, and we appreciate the work you do. The first thing I want to say tonight is that all the candidates here are qualified. I think it's important as a community, though, that we think about the skills that are really best needed on the Collingswood School Board at this place and time, and the types of issues that we are facing. Functions of the school board include things such as strategic planning, policy development, budget preparation, contract negotiations, facilities planning, supervision of the superintendent. I'd like to tell you just a brief bit about my experience. I bring educational credentials that I think really help. I have a bachelor's degree in special ed. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I also have a doctorate in higher education leadership. I also have 33 years of higher education administration experience, with half of that being at the senior level.
That's time, Mr. Becker. Thank you. That's time, that's the 90 seconds. That was 90 seconds, that's time. Okay, thank you. You'll get 90 more at the end.
Okay.
Ray Becker, and next up is Tim Farrow.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for our gracious host and moderator for having us here this evening. I moved here about 10 years ago with my lovely wife, who's here in the audience. And when we moved here, I had moved from Oakland, neighboring town where I had lived for a few years. And I grew up not far from Collingswood, about 20 minutes away in Washington Township. So I was very familiar with this town. Wasn't a stranger to it in terms of knowing at that point, this was a town that we loved already and could grow to love even more over the time that we lived here. And one of the things, of course, we looked at as we were getting married that year and anticipating having children pretty much right after getting married, which we did, coincidentally, was, of course, the schools. And again, knowing this town, as much as I knew at this time 10 years ago, it was on the cusp of great things. The schools, we had some questions about. I didn't know a whole lot beyond what I knew growing up. The reputation was not matching what we felt the town was at right at that point. So fast forward 5 years, we had our first child. I had an opportunity to try and join the school board. I did that because I wanted these schools to match what had been an even greater reputation that this town had gained in those additional 5 years. And by joining the school board, I knew of no better way
It's time, Mr. Farrow.
than to invest in the schools.
Just a note, if everyone can see, Rhodes is giving folks the 10 seconds, so I apologize if that was invisible to Ray and Tim. I'm sorry that, probably should have said that more early in the conversation. I think we're all clear now. Moving forward, Rhodes is going to tell you we got 10 seconds. Clinton.
Great. First, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and also to thank the other candidates and their dedication for the schools. In my experience, high levels of community engagement are absolutely essential to be able to support great education for our children. My wife and I moved to Collingswood about 8 years ago. I've been working with children and families in various ways for over 10 years, including guiding regionally and nationally accredited early learning facilities. I am currently a senior administrator for a local nonprofit agency. My son is a first grade student at Tatum, and my daughter is a pre-K student at Sharp. If elected to the board, I would be the sole board member with elementary age children attending a school other than Zane. And I feel that this, as well as some other experiences, provides me with a different perspective that makes me well suited to be a board member. Working in nonprofit administration has provided me with successful experiences in program assessment, grant writing, strategic planning, and budgeting. I think that these are important qualities to be able to be a member of the board. I do not view the Board of Education membership necessarily as a volunteer opportunity. To me, this is more like a job. The board member has one employee, which is the superintendent, and the board members themselves are accountable to you as the community members. As somebody who is responsible to the community, I think that communication and engagement would be a cornerstone of my tenure as a board member. Collingswood is a great place to live.
It's time, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for Matt for getting this together. My name is Steve Rydesi. I'm going to be completing my 12th year on the Board of Education. I'm a lifelong member here in the borough of Collingswood. Obviously, I'm sorry for being out of uniform or in uniform. I just got done 12 hours worth of work. 21 years as a police officer. I was promoted to sergeant in 2013. I've been involved with the Collingswood Little League for 16 years. My daughter is currently a senior at the high school. I have soon-to-be stepchildren, Anne-Marie Campbell, Samantha Campbell, who's 17, Sean Campbell, who's 23, and Michael Campbell, who's 20. I've been a part of the hiring of the superintendent search with Dr. Scott Oswald. When I started back on the board in 2004, we were a board divided. We didn't get much accomplished. You don't get much accomplished with the board divided. You have to learn to work together, and I learned that the skills through past presidents W. Craig Knapp and the late Mr. Lewis Capelli Sr., who really brought us together, and we got a lot accomplished. I was also part of passing the 2004 bond referendum for the major reservations at the high school and middle school, as well as some renovations at the elementary school level. If elected, I will continuously do what is best for all the children of Collingswood, like I've always done for the past 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Good evening. My name is Jason Wall. Me and my wife moved here to Collingswood 8 years ago, and we have 3 beautiful children, Riley, Frankie, and Luca. I have a master's degree in elementary and special education, and I've completed postmaster work that led to a principal certification in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Most recently, I completed a 2-year school leader residency with a focus on the principal as the instructional leader of the school. I'm a career educator. I've held positions as an aide in an autistic support classroom, a teacher, a special ed teacher, special ed supervisor and director, an athletic director, and an assistant principal of curriculum instruction. Currently, I'm a district level administrator in the city of Camden. More importantly, in all the roles I've held, I've always been the #1 advocate for students in my school. Nothing is more important than the rights and the well-being of the children that I serve. Throughout this evening, I'll share many stances on education issues. But as a parent in this district, and talking to many of you and hearing your concerns, once elected to the board, I will focus on 3 areas. 1, I will use current board policy in order to create a strong and active parent advocacy group. This group will promote transparency with the board and create a healthy communicational link with the board and the community. 2nd, special education. Look into the practices and policies currently in place. Work with the board in order to offer more supports for our children with special needs and to ensure that our children are taught in our district in the general education setting. And 3rd, research recent studies on the effects of homework and recess time in school and make policy change recommendations based off this. Thank you for being here tonight, and I look forward to serving as your voice in our children's
Thank you, that's done. Mr. Rosen.
All right, good evening. Let me add my thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. My name is David Routson. I'm honored to serve you as the current board president, and I've served on the board for about 6.5 years. My wife Kim and I have lived in Collingswood for almost 20 years. We have 2 children in the district, Ellie, who's a freshman in high school, and Matthew, who is in his final year at St. North. I'm a partner in a business evaluation firm in Haddonfield, and I've been there for almost 17 years. In addition to my current service on the board, many people in the audience tonight may know me as a past lector at Transfiguration Church, from my 6 years on the zoning board here in town, or as perhaps a coach of one or several of your children in baseball, softball, basketball, or soccer. Some others may know me as a swim official for Collingswood Marlins here in town, and also from community theater. My philosophy of education is simple. That best education includes the entire child. That our buildings should be places that contribute to the scholastic, social, emotional, and physical development of our children. I believe that our incredible teachers should be allowed to teach with minimal outside interference. They're trained professionals, many of whom have advanced degrees, and they should be allowed to do what they do best, which is teach. I believe our students should be challenged daily and should be encouraged to push themselves without fear. I look forward to your questions this evening, and as always, to an open, honest, and civil exchange of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your friends and your neighbors and the people who were bold enough to try and seek office to execute the job of being Board of Education members. So I think a round of applause is probably in order, especially when it's coming out that 2 years ago, there was not even a sufficient slate of candidates. We had to write some people in, if I recall correctly. So you have some people who are motivated and interested to seek this position, and I think that's really great for our community to show that. So, my 2 cents. The first thing I'd like to ask, since some of you are board members and some of you are not yet, but are hopeful to be board members, we'll start, if I would, Mr. Becker, with you. What do you believe the ceiling is for any successful member of a Board of Education, and what is the floor? So, like, what are the minimum roles and responsibilities that you view board members having, and what do you think is the most that could be achieved out of the position? And everyone will get 60 seconds for this one.
Basically, in my mind, the way I look at that is you're asking about the qualities of what's important in a board member. And I think that, I look at it as kind of a comprehensive position. I think a person has to be passionate about education. You have to understand the issues. They're constantly changing. To understand the role of our government and how government has become involved in education, sometimes too much. You have to be a strong advocate for all the community. You have to be conscientious and thorough, and to make sure that we're doing our homework, our research. I think a person also needs to be thoughtful and mindful of the community, people we serve. We're not in this position because we're appointed. We're not in this position because someone just hired us. We're in this position because someone has elected us. And I think it's important to be thoughtful and mindful of the community. I also think it's important that you be a good communicator, and also that you have the ability to kind of compromise and be flexible and work along with others. So I guess I don't have a top or bottom. I kind of see a combination of skills that is more circular.
Thanks, Mr. Farrow.
I guess I'll start with the floor, and I would really consider that to be that you're 100% committed in your heart to making the best efforts for the children of our schools. And I would call that the floor because certainly actions speak louder than, not words in this case, but your actual feelings and thoughts. And it's fine to have that intent, but your actions actually have to speak. And as the ceiling, I would say that it's important to go to the level where you make sure your schools are run well by your administrators and teachers. But remember, it's a basic principle in our code of ethics that we do not administrate the schools, though. We want to make sure they run the schools well. So I would say that's kind of the ceiling.
Mr. Connor.
Thank you. And for me, I think that the floor is essentially just the status quo. It's just keep doing things, put in a bare minimum of effort, and just kind of roll through. The ceiling, I think, is partially determined by the community itself. I think that part of the responsibility of a board member is to make sure that our schools reflect the community's needs, and that requires asking them what those needs are. And so, I mean, in a sort of grandiose way, it would be to develop, best practices and policies and procedures for the school district. We'd be looking at and researching what is working well in other places. I think we live in a very unique location where we're surrounded by experts at local universities and in other school districts that we can lean on for support and developing not just acceptable policies, but truly progressive policies that can make an impact not just locally, but also in the state.
Thank you. Mr. Rudetsky.
Yeah, as a school board member, you really need to learn to work with all the members of the Board of Education. I neglected to tell you prior to that, I was a DARE/resource officer for over 10 years in both the high school, middle school, Woodland Public School. I taught the DARE program, did the Sunrise program, came in contact with many, many great parents, never had a problem with any parent. Any people who know me in the borough know that I'm a very, very fair, and all I care about is the children of Collingswood. I will continue to do that if reelected, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
I think starting with the floor, sitting on a board as a volunteer in complacency and just going through the motions month after month and not really making any change or taking any action when you identify a need of your district. And I think an effective board, a highly